Think about this. A man named Brian won one of the Miss America feeder beauty pageants. This is an interesting one. Beauty pageants have always been about beauty, hence the name. So on one side, why shouldn't a man compete if he's beautiful enough? Just like why shouldn't a woman compete in the NFL if they're good enough? You see where this ends up going though, right? But on the other side, if you take a look at this picture, one of these things is not like the other. This guy clearly didn't win because he was the most beautiful. So what's going on here? In this episode, we'll take a look at the question of why we seem to care more about gender than sex, and how a Kansas school board voted to ban transgender students from certain bathrooms. Hit the subscribe button if you like these conversations. My name is Chris, and this is the Think Report. Okay, let's take a look at Brian, the beauty pageant winner. Let's reset context here by reviewing a little bit about beauty pageants. Beauty pageants started with the idea of selecting a woman to serve as a symbol of beauty for the community. They generally are multi-tiered, with local competitions feeding into larger competitions. National winners then compete internationally. Traditionally, beauty pageants evaluated women on appearance, but then evolved into things like intelligence, talent, and personality. All right, so back to Brian. There are a few ways to look at this. Let's try to look at it from all of them. The first way to look at this is through the lens of gender versus sex. Beauty competitions evaluate people, I'll say people for now, based on the highest standard of female beauty. Other competitions award things like innovation or intelligence or humanitarian efforts, as in the case with the Nobel Peace Prize. Beauty competitions evaluate beauty, and that's okay. We aren't all created equal. Smart people use their intelligence, tall people use their height, and beautiful people use their beauty. Use what God gave you, right? So in the case of the beauty competition, the competition is evaluating feminine beauty. Technically, that's a gender thing, not a sex thing. There's a clear difference between the two, which I'll get to in a bit. So bear with me for a minute. Winning a beauty competition is independent of the contestant's race, height, culture, and sex. Technically, it shouldn't matter if a man is competing. He probably won't do very well, but there's no reason he couldn't try, right? As an example, technically you can use a guitar as a drum. You just turn it over, you can drum in the back. But it doesn't sound very good, and it'll never do as good as a real drum because it's not a drum. If you were to use a guitar in a drum competition, you likely wouldn't win. You could say the same thing for women in men's sports. If a woman wants to play in the NFL, why shouldn't she be able to try? Again, she probably won't do very well. Football players are 6-foot masses of muscle and aggression. The size difference would probably be a safety issue, but if she could keep up, why not try out, right? Beauty pageants are like the NFL for feminine beauty. They're the best of the best. And if a man thinks he can compete, why not try out? He'll probably embarrass himself and lose miserably, but this is a competition to measure and award the best feminine beauty. It would be smarter for men to start a male feminine beauty contest, similar to women's sports. This way men aren't competing against women who will always beat them. Okay, so there's a second way to think about this. Since the 1800s, women have been on their back foot fighting for equality. They accomplished the right to vote, they obtained the same careers as men, they obtained sexual freedom. In the 1900s, women's sports were added to the Olympics. Men could not compete in women's sports because women wanted a fair chance to compete and win. There are lots of things in the world that men still dominate at, like CEO positions, sports, and entrepreneurship. So regarding beauty pageants, this is an example of one thing that women truly have that men don't. Welcoming men into the world of feminine beauty pageants is a snub to the male-dominated areas where women have struggled to claw their way into. It's like saying, remember the last 100 years that women have struggled to get into the boys' club? Well, I think it's about time that men took a shot at running the girls' club. Now, I don't think this is a strong argument. Like I said above, men are terrible women, so there's no way that a Miss America will ever be a dude. Women will always be better at being women. If this guy is saying that he's a woman, and from what I can tell, he does, It means that all he thinks about women is a gown, long hair, and high heels. That's not what a woman is. Scientifically speaking, sex is determined by the size of an organism's reproductive cells, known as gamete. Males produce many reproductive cells and often. Females produce few cells and not often. This is the same for everything that reproduces sexually. In trees, male trees produce pollen and female trees produce nuts or fruit. There are lots of pollen and comparatively very little fruit. Female trees do not produce pollen. Never. In animals, it's the same thing. Males produce lots of sperm, females produce comparatively fewer eggs. Even if you're a woman or a man that's infertile, you still don't produce the opposite reproductive cells. But we don't need science to prove that this guy isn't a woman. I mean, come on, we know this. There's more to a woman than just reproducing. They do better in school. They score higher than men in most leadership skills. They have better immune systems, and the list goes on. This guy is gaslighting all of us. And it's insulting to women by saying that they're nothing more than high heels in a dress. However, to say that he is feminine is different. Gender is different from sex. You can be a feminine man or a masculine woman, but your sex remains the same. Someone recently wrote to me saying that we don't need to pick on these people. Their transgenderisms don't affect me. They just want to live a happy life. But actually it does affect me. Number one, it insults my wife. She's more to me and more to this world than high heels and a mini dress. Number two, my kids are being taught this crap in elementary and middle school. It's wrong. You cannot change your sex. Stop telling my kids factually incorrect information. Number three, you're gaslighting everyone, essentially holding the truth hostage. It's cultural terrorism. And number four, if you truly believe you're a woman, then there's nothing to stop you from hitting on me or any man at a bar. If I'm single and we go home and I find out after that it's too late that you're a dude, that is highly unethical. There are many reasons that I've been directly affected by this cultural terrorism, claiming that men can be real women. And the same thing goes for women who say they're real men. I am much more than a short haircut and a beard. Looking back to Brian, the transgender beauty queen, this guy clearly got the pity vote, and it's not something he should want either. There must have been a prettier, more feminine, and clearly more psychologically stable woman that should have won. Someone was clearly virtue signaling to show that they were progressive and woke. But that came at the expense of all the other women that put time and effort into competing against Brian. He must know that. He must know that he was not actually the best in the competition. If your 3-year-old comes to you with a doll and says, "Look, I'm a mommy now. Would you like to see my baby?" The appropriate response would be, "Sure," because you know your child is playing pretend. Even if your child insists that she's not pretending, as a parent, you know better. You don't need to ask her who the father is or worry that you missed the baby shower. Yet when a grown adult says it, it's somehow different. How is it different? We know better here too. Why aren't we correcting these people? This brings me to my next point. Sex and gender are two different things. I'm sure we all know men who have a softer feminine personality and women with more aggressive masculine personalities. How did we get to the point where gender matters more than sex?
Yeah, she get to the cash when she walk. She look like a bad when she walk. She get to the cash when she walk.
This person is upset because they were misgendered. Why? What is so wrong about it that brought this person to tears? There are a few situations where you need to disclose your sex, like your doctor for health reasons, or for your passport or your birth certificate for identification reasons. But I can't think of anywhere where your gender matters. If you're a feminine man, who needs to know you're a feminine man? No one. Absolutely no one. Nowhere does it matter if you're a feminine man or a masculine one. A Kansas school district banned students from using their preferred restrooms and playing on certain sports teams of choice, instead forcing them to use birth-assigned sex. The school board is getting some backlash from the teens who disagree with the policy. But again, who says that gender is more important than sex? When someone uses a washroom, they're seeking privacy so that they can relieve themselves. This is totally independent of your gender. It depends on the organs you were born with. If you were born with male organs, you should be in the male washroom. If you are a feminine man, fine, but you still pee the same as every other man. You have no business being in the woman's washroom. Your gender has nothing to do with this. In Scotland, they're currently debating giving transgender people a gender verification certificate. But why? What does this accomplish? Gender doesn't mean anything. Like I said above, your sex matters for health reasons and for identification, but your gender doesn't. When you apply for a driver's license, does your gender matter? No. Only your sex, so that police can identify you and inform the paramedics how to treat you should you ever get into a car accident. Should they add gender to a driver's license? No. Why? Gender is something you can see. I know Brian, the transgender beauty queen, is feminine because I have eyes, and he's wearing high heels and a dress. That's not something that needs to be added to someone's identification. Think about that.